are the Development Commission. By the time we have finished this interview, about 200 people would have died of starvation. Their stomachs would have burst and they would have died while we are chatting here. This is a dreadful situation to find ourselves in. Now, on development issues, you have come up with a new idea, which you have introduced as agenda for change. You are saying, if I'm correct in understanding what you're trying to say, that by doing agenda for change, where you are going to put 88 million euro more into democracy, good governance, rule of law and human rights programs, out of the total DCI budget, you will accelerate growth?
Yes. Yes, it sounds paradoxical perhaps, but what we see that if there is no human rights, you can't expect the growth, basically. Yeah, you would say, well, look at China and the part of
Exactly.
the six, but even there, people are able to travel. They sometimes speak out their minds, not always, but there is a growing ability of civil society really to stand for their rights. Then the middle class evolves. There are economic rights. Perhaps you would say they are missing some political rights, but a lot of economic rights in the countries where we have seen the growth. You can't decouple two. And we have seen North Africa. That's the worst example, where we have invested a lot of supporting people and the regimes collapsed. And so the people is out on the street and with very difficulties really to rebuild their lives for new growth. So I think this political dimension, you can't decouple from development support because only political society gives a chance for economic growth.
I understand that. I understand that freedom and democracy, the rule of law and good governance are very important. I can see the link between the rule of law, property rights, and the rights of owning companies, buying, selling your home, and having a legal system that functions to growth. And so in China and Vietnam and even Singapore, if I may say this, the rule by law, not the rule of law necessarily, but the rule by law has actually encouraged economic growth, because as long as the legal system works properly, then people know that they can invest, they can get compensation, they can go to the courts, they can get redress, and so on. Whether democracy in its sense that we understand it here in Europe, where you have an adversarial system, whether that system will apply properly in developing countries, I'm not sure about. Because I think it's a cultural development too, that when you have a certain level of sustenance and development and money, then you are comfortable and secure enough to go and shout at someone who may be a very important person. But you know that what you're saying is going to be listened to. So I think in some ways, Andris, I'm going to step out a bit out of line as a politician. Separating the rule of law, property rights, commercial rights, and governance and good governance in terms of corruption from democracy, i.e. the right to oppose, the right to argue, do all the things we do.
I think we understand each other quite well, actually, because the formulation democracy is that I have a choice. I have a choice to be here with you, I have a choice to move, I have a choice. And I think that is what I understand with democracy. I have a choice to vote and not to vote. Political system, I have choice to accept or not to accept. So I think that is the crucial. This is what I understand. It does not mean necessarily a system like UK system is. It's not necessarily this. But I think the personal freedom is crucial. And without it, you can't expect also economic development. If you don't feel safe, how you will make investment? You will never make investment.
So I think I'm trying to say is that we need to be careful when we talk about democracy. What sort of democracy we are talking about? If it's an adversarial democracy, I personally don't believe adversarial democracy works in Africa.
But I would say the freedom, African, whatever, Malian, is the same as Latvian. So for me, it's no different. So we are trying to achieve the same, that I have ability to choose what to do and what not to do. And I think that's what we are trying really to take care of. Because if it's dictatorship, I have no choice. Basically, I am under the spell of the dictatorship.
But there is another element of danger in talking about democracy without really specifying. There is a culture of winner takes all. So I stand for election, I win the election is fought properly, fairly, international observers say I have won the election, then I take everything.
But after 4 years, if it's the democracy, after 4 years, you should be careful.
Precisely.
The next will take all.
But there will be not be 4 years. I take it all forever. This has happened in many countries in Africa. Zimbabwe is a case in point. Mugabe was elected fairly, and he never held a proper election after that. So how do we then say to all these African or other leaders who had turned themselves from democrats to dictators, yeah, I was elected.
True, but there is constitution. There is constitution and constitutional court. So constitution specify how many times I could be re-elected, and we follow these developments that the constitutional rule should be followed. We have different constitutions, but that I think is a part of the game.
So the independent judiciary is much more important in that case. Because if you have an independent judiciary, they will mark down and they will make sure the constitution is enacted.
But if there is no the elections, then I will sooner or later will take over independent judiciary. So both are needed.
Precisely.
You need both, independent elections and independent judiciary, because only both together in symbiosis works. Where I would agree that I think sometimes we simplify developments in Asia. We just try saying, well, it should be like Europe, not necessarily